Okay guys, we have the Walbro Alright guys, we have the Walbro 525 fuel pump here that we are going to install in the stock hanger. So that's what this video is going to be about. As I showed in the last video, the engine compartment is essentially done. Outside of putting the battery back in. So this is the fuel pump. Basically, it doesn't come with anything except for the pump itself. So this is some stuff that essentially came with the iWire hardwire kit. So this is going to include the stud bypass. And then I went ahead and bought these O-rings just from Harbor Freight, but they're the Viton, so they should be ethanol and gasoline resistant or compatible. And then we are going to need to put a spacer on here as well to hold these O-rings in place. Actually, basically to keep the O-rings towards the top. So what we're going to go ahead and do is kind of trial and error as far as that goes. I want to get the stock hanger out of the car first and kind of take a look at it, and I need to figure out how far up this is going to press into the stock hanger. And then what I may end up needing to do is, I'll kind of show you what this looks like underneath here. But I think what I'm going to end up having to do is cut at least some of this length off here. And I may end up needing to remove both of these guys. But essentially the spacer is going to go right here. I think this may work. If not, I'll find something that works. If this does work, I'll probably end up taking the braiding off of it. But this is ethanol compatible fuel line. And then basically the two O-rings are going to sit on top of this. That way when I push this into the hanger, the O-rings don't kind of slide back down. So essentially we're going to get the stock hanger out, get it disassembled, and then we'll go ahead and see how this guy's going to fit. And then we'll go ahead and do the stud bypass as well, and I'll kind of walk you guys through this process. Okay guys, this is the passenger side rear seat removed. If you've never removed the rear seat, basically there's these little levers right here you just pull back on, and then the seat just pops right out. So this is the cover that we need to remove here. We've got these Phillips screws. 4 of these guys should come up pretty easy. And then this is going to expose the fuel pump. Alright, so let's go ahead and pop this guy up, which is basically glued on. I do want to be careful not to damage any of this wiring here. So as you can see, there is a wire connector right down here. Just going to squeeze this guy. Hopefully I can get him to pop up. I'm going to go ahead and grab a pair of pliers actually and squeeze this guy to get this popped up. And then I'm going to go ahead and mark these 2 fuel lines just to make sure I get them back in the right place. Actually these 3 fuel lines. And then I will be right back. Okay, so I'm going to use these needle nose pliers to squeeze this guy. And then I'm going to gently pull up on this guy kind of at the same time. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So now I can push this guy out of the way over here. And then I want to mark these guys. These are pretty dirty. Actually, it looks like this one is marked with a 2. That one is not marked at all. That one has a 1. So these are somewhat marked here-ish. They're pretty black. So this looks like, is that a 1? Not really. So that's going to be a 1. This is going to be a 2. 2 to 2, 1 to 1. And then this one is going to be unmarked. Okay. So this foam right here, I'm going to very gently pull this up because I do not want to destroy this foam. I think we probably do have to break it right here. Okay, so we got that guy out of the way. So then we have these bolts right here holding this on. Ooh, it looks like there's a lot of junk in here. So I'm actually going to take a vacuum and kind of vacuum this out here really fast because I don't want debris falling into the gas tank. Okay guys, so I've got some more tools down here. So this is an 8mm, so I've essentially got a power ratchet and an 8mm. These are going to be the fuel line removal tools that I've got here. I've got these picks in case I need these to assist with removing these quick connectors. And then I've got a bunch of these guys here as well. These are probably going to leak fuel. I'm gonna, I guess, tuck these underneath first here. In reality, leaking fuel is going to be unavoidable, but it'd be nice if we could at least catch some of it, so that's kind of what I'm going for here. Okay. And then what we will probably do is we also want to keep the ends of these guys clean and tucked away afterwards. So I'm probably going to wrap each one up in one of these cloths, and hopefully I can just push it off to the side here. Like I said, I already have marked them. 1, 1, 2, 2. This is blank, and this one is blank as well. So let's go ahead and get these fuel lines out of the way first. While this guy is still secure, we'll go ahead and start with this guy. Maybe I'll move the light a little bit here to see if I can move it into a better position. Not really able to move it into that great of a position, unfortunately. I'm going to be creating some shadow probably, but I'm going to go ahead and try and squeeze this guy in here and this guy in here at the same time. I find it easier to kind of break these guys in half. It's my personal preference. Okay, this is not pressing into here very well. Okay. I'm wondering if this is the incorrect size. I think this is the incorrect size actually, so let me go and snag a different size. Okay guys, alright, so I'm underneath the cover here, and essentially I'm going to disconnect these fuel lines one at a time. So I did put, as you can see, some paper towel under here to hopefully catch the mess. I do have these marked, as I showed you already. And what I'm going to do once I get this off is I'm just going to wrap this guy up gently. And I'm going to kind of tuck him back out of the way here, hoping that I can get him to kind of stay down a little bit. There we go, that guy's kind of staying down. Okay. And we're going to remove the next one, and to remove these, essentially you just pinch and pull, and that guy comes off super easy. This whole area is really dirty, so I'm really trying to keep this as clean as possible. The vacuuming helped a bit, but there's still a whole lot of dirt and dust. So I'm going to wrap this one up, tuck him away, and I'm trying to tuck these out of the way so that they're not in the way when I'm removing this entire fuel pump. There we go, that guy tucked away pretty well. And then we've got this is the last one here. I'm going to turn this guy a little bit so I can get to both sides of the clip. And so this is the guy that's going to leak right here, as you can see. And I can certainly smell. And then we're going to go ahead and wrap him up, tuck him down out of the way. Okay, so all three of those are tucked out of the way. I was able to catch some of this fuel, the rest of it's going to evaporate. I did already vacuum around here. Okay, so hopefully the goal is to try and avoid getting debris into this fuel tank. So as I said before, this is an 8mm. So I've got this right here because this is what I'm going to set the fuel pump in. I'm going to make sure I'm on these guys well. I remove them one at a time, and actually, yep, yeah, buddy. Yeah, not right now. Okay, so that's one down. Two down. Okay, and I'm just going to continue getting all these guys off, okay? Okay, so I got all of these guys out of the way, these nuts, and essentially this is going to be this cover right here, which kind of holds the fuel pump in place. I'm going to set this guy out of the way, and then this fuel pump should be loose and actually just come right up. So this is going to drip a bunch of fuel. It's going to make a bit of a mess. That's why I have this tub ready to grab this. So I'm going to be very gentle and try and work this out. So there is kind of a rubber gasket here essentially that I'm bringing this guy up out of. And if I remember correctly, this can be a little bit of a bear to fish out of, so you just want to be gentle and take your time. And actually it looks like this gasket is going to come up with it, and I am catching on something down here. I'm not sure what it is. I'm assuming that it has to do with the fuel level. Yep, and that's what it was that fuel level. Okay. So hopefully you can see, but that is the gas tank. That is the fuel pump. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this door in hopes to lessen the smell in the garage. And we're going to bring this guy over here to the bench. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and get this rubber gasket off. So this is so essentially this little fuel level is what was catching. So just be very careful when you're pulling this guy up that you don't break or bend him. And then this guy I'm actually going to set back in the car this way. Actually, you know what? I'm going to leave this out because I'm going to clean this for now. Okay, so I'm going to clean up and get everything set up here, and then we'll start to disassemble this guy. Okay guys, so we've got the fuel pump here. So we're going to separate this top portion from the rest of the housing. You do want to dump this guy out right when you pull it from the car because it is going to have a great deal of fuel in here, which you'll see. I'm going to start by essentially removing these wires here, which are just tucked in that go to the fuel level float. This is what was holding me up when I was trying to remove this puppy. So just be mindful the way that this needs to come out. You pull it up kind of through this, and then once you get it to about here, you need to kind of tilt it to get it around. So just be mindful that you don't break that guy. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just get these wires out of the way here. I'm just going to be really gentle with all this stuff because I do not want to risk breaking any of this. It would be pretty rough. Okay, so those are now loose and connected to here. And then this guy right here, I believe, so there's a little button right here. Hopefully you can see that, and I'm going to push that. And yep, it looks like this guy just slides right off of here. Okay. So, and I would recommend taking pictures of all this stuff. Obviously, I'm videotaping this, so I will have good footage as far as how it goes back together. But definitely recommend some sort of either videotape it or take pictures just to make sure you get it back together. Okay, so now we're going to separate these two halves. And to do that, we need to essentially loosen these tabs right here. So these go all the way around it, as you can see here. I think the easiest way to do this is with these zip ties to kind of hold this guy up, because basically you need to have all these popped up at the same time. This is kind of a small zip tie. It'd be easier probably with a bigger one, but this is all I have. Whoops. Okay, so that's holding that tab up. So we're just kind of popping one of these tabs up at a time here. As you can see, oopsie. Okay, and then this should be the last one, so we're going to pop this guy up and then gently push up kind of on all these tabs. Just be careful while you're doing this. Make sure you're not forcing anything, not breaking anything. You really want to take your time getting these two separated, and basically with everything involving this fuel pump housing. Okay, so this is what we've got here. So you can see there's some debris in the bottom of that guy. Looks like there's a really big O-ring in the bottom of that guy, which essentially connects to this tube right here. Okay. I think I can essentially just leave this connected to here for now. Okay, I'm going to set this out of the way for now. And then this is the actual fuel pump right here. So you can see that it has this large filter on the bottom of it. So what we need to do is get this pump out and replace it with the new one, essentially. So taking pictures of this basically all the way around. Make sure I can get this back the way that it went. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and very gently take these wires up over this little notch here. Okay, so we've got this guy here. And then I should be able to just slide this guy out. So I'm going to grab a pair of pliers. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and, so we're going to go ahead and disconnect this line right here, which as you can see there's a tab here and a tab here. So kind of the exact same thing. We're going to be very gentle, maybe use 2 screwdrivers actually. Just very gently pop those up. There we go, and that guy came right out. Perfect. That was, well, we got more flow here. So that's why you definitely want to use some sort of container underneath here to catch all of this. Okay, so that guy is loose. Ooh, I've got a cut on my finger and this is not feeling very good. So now, basically we're now trying to separate this top portion from this bottom portion. So we have another connection right here. So this, once again, is a similar clip. Essentially all these clips so far are pretty much identical. That pushes straight off, no issues there. Okay, so we've got these guys are free. These guys are free. Okay, so now, basically this entire section with these black tubes is going to come with this top portion. So now it looks like it's these 2 spring posts that's actually holding this in place. So we're going to compress this, and then as you can see there is it looks like maybe only on one side, only on this side there's a little C-clip here. So hopefully you can see that little C-clip. I'm going to see if we can get that guy to pop off. Perfect, so he came off pretty easy. And then my suspicion is that this whole thing is just going to come out. So I'm going to be very careful with these guys, making sure that we're not catching or binding. Just a little bit at a time here. No hurry. Perfect. Oh, and there go the springs. I think the springs look identical, so I think we're okay. Actually, I'm just going to take the springs and set them over here. Perfect. So you can see only one of these guys has that room for that C-clip, and that's what prevents this guy from popping all the way out. And that essentially is this top piece completely removed. So I'm going to set that over here in my spare parts area, and then now we are on to this guy right here. Okay, so now I can see why this fuel pump didn't want to come out. So this is an identical design to everything else, basically these same clips here. There's two of them. Hopefully you can see there's one here and one here. It's a little easier to see from the top, here and here. So these two tabs need to come outward on the bottom aspect, and then my suspicion is that this will just pop right out from there. So I'm going to use 2 screwdrivers like I did before. If I remember correctly, this is a little bit tricky. This might be easier with a zip tie maybe. Yeah, this is these have to come up pretty high actually to get past these tabs. So this is not super easy. I remember this being the most difficult part the last time I did this. I'm gonna grab a couple of more narrow screwdrivers. See, what I do not want to do is break these guys, so it's kind of a fine line because they need to come out quite a bit, but I don't want it to break. Okay, so I think that I got that side past it by pulling the tab and then cranking the bottom of this that way. Now I'm going to pull the other tab, hopefully. No, and now the first tab popped back in. Yeah, this is not easy. There's no easy way to do this. Let's try it again. This is almost easier with another set of hands because you have to pop the tab while simultaneously pulling down. Nope. Didn't work. Okay, that one is, I think, loose. This is not working for me. Okay, I'm going to see if I can, once I have this tab, man, this is not easy. come on, man. Okay, we got it. Jesus. Okay, so yeah, that is very difficult. So see these tabs right here? These guys essentially are stuck underneath these little flaps, similar to these hooks right here. But they need to be pushed way out simultaneously to make it over this guy. So it's a huge pain in the butt. So there is a spacer right here that you will see. We need to keep this spacer right here. We're going to use this. So we're going to set this over here. We're definitely going to use that C-clip as well. Okay, this pump we can basically just set out of the way. We don't need this old pump for now. But let me show you the size difference. Pretty big size difference between the two, huh? Okay. So in here we have a O-ring. Actually, there's multiple O-rings, but the O-ring that we're interested in, the one that we need to change, is the one down here, which essentially fit over this guy. So it had a spacer on it. Dunk. It had an O-ring that slides right in here, dunk, and presses up against that spacer. That's kind of where we're at. So what we need to do is essentially mimic that with this new one. So I can see by looking down there that there is only a single O-ring. And I would actually like to get that guy out of there because I'm going to use a double O-ring. I'm trying to decide if I want to get that guy out of there or not. Give me a minute to take a look at this and grab a pick. Okay guys, so I took a pick and I just popped this O-ring out of this. It came out super easy. So I was able to find this O-ring. This one came from Harbor Freight, or not Harbor Freight, but AutoZone. This is a Viton, so this should be good for ethanol as well as regular gasoline. This is the stock one. These two fit pretty much identically when pressed on top of this guy right here. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just use both of these. So if you kind of look right here, they look identical to me. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and use both of these guys for the seal. So now what we need to do is we need to figure out how deep this guy needs to sit into here. So we need this to fit perfectly, essentially, right? So it's going to fit a little bit different than this one. We're not going to be using this filter right here because there's just not room for it. So what we're going to use instead of the filter is we're going to use this spacer right here. So this spacer, let me pop this guy off and I'll show you. So this spacer is going to sit, ooh, this actually doesn't work. So it worked on the other Walbro. So that's going to actually be a bit of a problem because what this did on the other one was it sat right here. And then it allowed the back side of this to press up against the bottom of this to hold it in place and create kind of that perfect space. But this isn't going to fit. So that is creating an issue. Okay, so I'm going to have to figure out what to do here. It's close. What I could potentially do is drill this guy out just a little bit. Enough to where he'll fit. I don't think it would take much. Just to where this will indeed press onto that. So that's probably what I'm going to do, is drill this out just barely and see if I can get that to fit right here. So then the other aspect is that this nozzle right here is longer than it is on the other one. So here, I'm going to kind of work over here on this clean side. So, whoops. Let's go ahead. I'd like to just get this thing out of the way here if I could. I don't know quite how to get this guy off. I think that this little metal O-ring can probably pry off, but not very easily. Okay, well, that doesn't want to come off very easy. So what I'm going to do is line these up side by side. And you can see here how much deeper the black top sits when compared to the white top. So my suspicion is that I'm basically going to have to take off definitely this entire end and maybe even a little bit more to get it to sit deep enough in there. Let's go ahead and put it in here and see what happens. So, okay, that does not look like it's going to fit in there, unfortunately. Oops. Okay, so we need to get this guy off because this large connector will not fit through this hole, unfortunately. So we can't really even trial this until we get this guy out of the way. Okay, so that guy's out of the way. I still don't think this is gonna fit, so this won't fit into that hole. So these guys, do they just pull right out? Not really. So I was hopeful that these guys would pull right out. Let me grab a pick. Okay, let's see if I use a pick, if I can get this guy to just disconnect to where I can just get these wires out of here. Just temporarily. Not really. These guys do not exactly look like what they want to pop right out for me, and I'm having a hard time seeing exactly what's holding them in. So the other option is that we kind of cut away at this a little bit to get this guy to fit. It's really close. It's not quite there. Well, nothing is going to be easy. Alright, let me mess around with this guy and see if I can get him disconnected somehow. Okay guys, so this Walbro has these two little tabs right here. These are pretty hard to see, but that little tab right there on both of these guys, and that's what hooks this into place into here. So I was able to get those off, so now we can go ahead and actually trial this like it will actually sit. So these wires go in first, and then as you can see, go right through here. And then we're going to go ahead and push this pump up into place like it would actually sit. There we go. Okay, so this is essentially how this guy is going to sit, like this. Okay, so what we need to figure out is how deep this guy is actually going compared to the other one, and where that backing plate's gonna be. So this would actually be nice to measure. So let's see here. So I'm going to go ahead and take a marker, and I'm going to go ahead, and this is kind of hard to do one-handed, but what I want to essentially do is mark the end of this guy. Okay, so that's marked pretty good, and then I also want to mark the end of this little guy that sticks out. Well, that's about where we're at. So this, probably here and here, those are going to be the two marks for how far the butt of this sticks out. Okay, so now, whoops, let's go ahead and remove this guy and let's compare it to the stock, so we get a feel for if we need to trim any of that nozzle or not. Well, oh shit, I should have measured this ahead of time, because now this is snapped back into place, unfortunately. Okay, so this, it looks like, wow, this is going to be pretty similar actually, as to, it sits right about here. Huh, so it's almost identical actually to this one, which makes me think I could potentially get away with using the filter that it came with. However, the downside to using this filter as opposed to a spacer is it's that spacer is what's going to actually hold this guy in place. So I feel like we kind of have to use the spacer, because that's what's going to hold this into place, because this guy does not have these snaps that the stock fuel pump has, right? So otherwise it's going to be loose in there. In fact, we may even need a bigger spacer for this guy than we did with the 450 Walbro that I installed. Okay, so I'm going to get this guy get this guy out of here again, which is going to take me a second. And then it looks like we really don't need to trim any of this from what I can see. So what I'd like to do next is I'm going to trial this with the O-rings in place. So let me get this guy out of here first. We'll trial this with the O-rings in place. and we'll kind of see where we're at here. Okay guys, so this is that spacer. This is what I used on the Walbro 450. I took it and essentially put it right here and it created the perfect amount of space. So I was able to get this on here and it looks like it fits pretty well. It gives me obviously this much space. So this is what came with the pump, is this filter, and this gives me a little bit more space, which I feel like I'm actually gonna need. So let's go ahead and actually try this guy and see if he works. I mean, it makes sense to use him. So we're gonna just push him into place. I hope I didn't break him by doing that. I feel like he definitely pushed on there. And so it looks like there is kind of a plastic gap here. I think once this guy is on, he is not going to want to come off. Okay. So my concern was that if this thing was pushed all the way up against here, there would not be any airflow. I don't know if that's a valid concern or not. I don't think that it is, because I think that there's these little plastic spacers in here to essentially prevent this from completely occluding. So, and I can see that there is some space. This guy does not squish all the way, as you can see. So I think even with this pressed all the way down, I think we're still going to be okay. So let's give this a try here. So let's go ahead and put the O-rings in place. We do need a spacer for this guy too. So we're going to need the spacer, then we're going to need the O-rings, and that would be fantastic if this all just came together perfectly. We're going to do a double O-ring, so now we just need a spacer. So I was looking at some of this fuel line here. This is essentially fuel line, the stock fuel line from the STI fuel rails. Since I replaced all the fuel rails, we're not going to be needing this. But this essentially went from the firewall main fuel lines to the intake manifold, like fuel rail housing with those fuel lines. This is, I don't think this is going to work because it's just too small to squeeze over these little lips. I could also consider using this guy, I suppose, as a spacer. This, after all, is what the other one used. Let's compare these two side by side. So this new one is definitely longer. So the trick is you want it to be the perfect length to where it's pressing up against this to hold this pump in place. So let's try this before we actually work too hard on figuring out a spacer. Let's put this back where it's going to go. So that guy pushes all the way up in there. So I could not go any further even if I wanted to. Well, actually that's not true. I could go a pinch. I could go just a pinch further, not much further. So we could probably take off just a pinch if we wanted to. And I almost feel like we need to, but it's hard to say. So I'm just looking down here where these O-rings sat. And I believe that the O-ring didn't go in past these little lips here. So there's these little lips in here. I'm just going to push this O-ring back in. Yeah, so this essentially... So the O-ring is right there. It popped out super easy with a little hook. And then you can see in here, hopefully, that there's these 4 little plastic hooks, and that's what essentially stops the O-ring. So I'm not going to be able to push this guy in far enough, I don't think. So I think I am going to have to cut some of this off, probably. So let's go ahead and take a Dremel to this guy, and we're going to go ahead and just take off a bit. I think we're probably just going to take off this entire end piece right here. So I already have a Dremel right here, and then I also have a different bit for it that I had set out. Here it is. So I'm going to take this to it, and then I'm going to smooth it a little bit with this. So I'm going to go inside and go ahead and take care of this, and I'll be back. And then we'll trial this and see exactly how it fits. Okay guys, so I took the Dremel and basically just cut the tip of this off, and then I went ahead and took some emery cloth and kind of smoothed this out as best I could, and then I sprayed it off with carb cleaner, took a Q-tip. Well, first actually I took this pick and ran it along the inside to get any plastic, then took a Q-tip to the inside to get any remaining plastic, and anyway, I think I got it pretty well. So let's go ahead and see if we can actually figure out a spacer now that's going to sit right here. And then once we have that spacer in place, the next step essentially is going to be those O-rings. And I almost feel like this spacer right here would do the trick. Actually, it doesn't fit. Never mind, that is not going to do the trick. That is not going to fit on there. Okay, so I'm going to clean this again. This is going to be tough because this is so tight right up against here. I'm not quite sure what we can use as a spacer that's actually going to squeeze into there. So let me figure out a spacer, and then I'll be back. Okay guys, so I am going to try and use this as a spacer. This once again is the fuel line off of the STI, the stock. I'm going to take just a hint of oil here on a Q-tip, and I'm going to go ahead and put that here on this nipple and see if I can't get this spacer to fit on here, because I really don't have a whole lot of other options, and I feel like this should probably work. If I really push hard, Yeah, it's not wanting to go. If I twist it a little bit, if it wasn't for that little distended part at the end, it would go on without any issue, but unfortunately it is not wanting to go. Let's use a pinch more oil here. Let's use a little bit more this time. Try it again. And twisting. I know I can get it. It's just gonna take a minute and a whole lot of force. Dang. All right, I'm gonna work on getting this on here, and then I'll be back. Okay guys, I was able to get this pressed on here. It was not very easy to do, but eventually I was able to. So this spacer is going to hold these O-rings up into place. So now let's get the O-rings on. We're going to go ahead and use just a hint of oil once again on these O-rings. Probably actually just a hint of oil right here to help these slide into place. These O-rings should go on much easier. So let's go ahead and use this one first. And actually, I'm just gonna kind of coat this whole O-ring in just a little bit of oil. We'll put this guy on first. And actually, this is gonna be pretty tight. The spacer I'm using is almost too big. That's pretty good. Well, that's about perfect, I'd say. So we've got the spacer and then we've got a double O-ring here. Okay. So now this is going to be the moment of truth if everything is essentially going to line up okay. So we're going to wipe my hand off for a minute here. And then we're going to go ahead and put the wires through first, as we need to do. Okay, we got the wires through. And then we're going to see how this guy presses into place. And I'm having trouble getting this guy lined up here. There we go. It's a little bit lined up. And this guy is not exactly wanting to go for some reason. There we go. Okay, that went. So I felt that push in really well. Okay. So this is actually locked in here pretty firmly. And yeah, so that seemed like it went in pretty well. It's not going to click into place like the other one did because there's no snaps on here. So now what I'm hoping is that when we put this bottom half of this hanger on, that it's going to press up against this to hold this guy in place. That's what I'm hoping. So first of all, let's clean this debris out of here. I'm just going to hit this with carb cleaner. Get the debris out of the bottom of this guy. Perfect. Okay, so we got the debris out of there. Excellent. Okay, so now we are going to put this guy back together and let's see how this goes. The only thing I don't like about this is that, oh, you know what? I'm actually kind of pinching this one wire here, which I don't really like. I'm going to see if I can fix that. Because I feel like that is actually, yeah, it looks like those stayed in place really well, so that's good. Okay, so just, I need to be a little more mindful when I put this guy in place that I'm not pinching either of these wires. So that is what I'm going to pay more attention to now. It's kind of hard to see, but there's these little tabs here, these little lines here that we want to avoid the wires being caught up in. There we go. Okay, that's better. So now it's sitting perfectly. So that, I think that wire was actually causing it to come out just a pinch. So this is perfect. Okay, so that's excellent. So if you can look in there, you can see how that red wire was pinched before, but now it's not. So we're clear on both of those guys. Okay, so this is good. So now we're going to go ahead and trial this guy back into the hanger here, and we can't turn this. This only goes one way. So let's go ahead and see how this goes. I'm having a hard time actually figuring out exactly how this guy goes back together. So these are these snaps here. So it must go like this, maybe? Yep. Okay, this is how it goes. Okay. So, gosh, I feel like this filter is so much bigger than the other one. I don't know if this is going to be an issue or not. Let's see if this is going to work. So the question is whether or not the bottom of this filter is going to be pressed up against this guy enough to where it's actually holding the pump in place. So I can see as I do this, this is actually bending the bottom here. Yep, so this is an issue. It is not quite fitting. It's not quite fitting on the bottom. So you can see there's kind of this gap here. I could probably almost force it. If I do, it's definitely going to be squished on the bottom there, which I'm not super fond of. Let's see if we can force it. We can try. Actually, I think it fits. So, it is a bit tight, but as you can see, this is distended right here. Essentially, the filter is in place. The filter is kind of squished if you look down there, but basically this filter is being pressed up against here, and that is holding the fuel pump up in place. So I think this is going to work. So this is what we're going to go for. So I think we're just going to leave that as it is. Perfect. So this was like I said, this is a bit different than installing that Walbro 450. As I said before, the spacer worked perfectly. On this one, essentially, we're using the fuel filter as a spacer. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next portion of what we have to do here. And first of all, let's go ahead and get this guy back together like it was. So if you recall, we ended up disconnecting these guys from this, so we need to put this back the way it was. So, and if I recall, it's hard to see, but there's two little tabs within the squares pointing this way. That's what's going to connect on this hook right here. So I suspect that this is going to just snap in. Yep, so it snapped right in. Same thing here. We just need to be sure and have it pointed the correct direction, which is this way, if you can see that. And this little tab on this guy is just a little bit crooked. I am going to just move him over just a pinch, just to straighten him out. So obviously this entire install is a really long process. I'm going to use this so that I can get in here I just need to pull this guy over just a pinch. I just want to make sure he's perfectly centered. That way this guy snaps back into place like it should. There we go. Okay, and then I'm going to press that tab. Perfect. Okay, so now this little tab should hook on the little plastic nib in here, and this should snap. Perfect. Okay. Excellent. So these are now back in place, just like we need them to be. Perfect. Okay, so this guy is essentially done. And as long as this guy doesn't crack and none of these tabs crack, I think this is probably going to hold. So there is like a little bit of a gap here, but I really don't think it matters. So, okay. We're going to give this a shot. So the other end is, I don't think that this guy is going to fit, unfortunately, or is he? Oh yeah, so this guy is going to fit. This is the other end that we created. So this is going to snap into here. And then these two are going to go to the stud bypass. So that's what we're going to work on next, is the stud bypass. So let me get this cleaned up a little bit and we'll start to work on that. Okay guys, so this is the top piece here, and I went ahead and set this cover on top as it goes in the car. So this only goes one way because of this slot right here. So you want to line this up, because when you do the stud bypass, you obviously don't want to put a screw or a hole where it's going to interfere with this. So I'm just going to mark this just so that it's obvious for me to avoid. Perfect. So we'll get this guy out of the way here. And you can see that I cleaned this guy right here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pick out our two spots, essentially, where we're going to drill our holes for the stud bypass. Really, anywhere besides this line is going to be okay, but we also want to keep in mind that we have these little plastic prominences here that we want to avoid. So essentially I'm going to put my thumb right here. This is where that line goes from there right across here. So really anywhere over here is fine. So what I would probably do is like maybe one right here and one right here. I think that would probably be okay. That should be pretty well out of the way. We also actually don't want to interfere with these guys, so keep that in mind. So we could do that. Actually, I can see this better. If I hold this a certain way, I can see where the creases are. So maybe it would actually be better if we went so that we can be completely clear of this guy. I don't want to be too close to him. We could do one right here, and we could do one right here. That should give us plenty of room. So let me get rid of these two on this side so that it's not confusing. So carb cleaner will take that off immediately. Okay, so then essentially we have these two. I always like to double, triple check that there is not going to be any interference with this guy in place before I drill these holes, because if I screw this up, it's gonna suck. So that gives us a pretty decent amount of room here and here. That looks pretty good, I think. I think that'll work. I'm gonna say we could also put one kind of more over here. So this one is actually kind of off. So it's actually going to be more like right here. And then the other one is going to be like more like right here. Yeah, let's do those two. Those two look pretty good. Okay, so then if we hold this up to the light, we should be able to see where these are from the back side. So I'll probably actually drill it on the back side just to make sure. So we got this guy right here. And then we got this guy right here. Okay, so those do indeed look correct. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. So the final hole for this is going to be a 15/64. So you definitely want to use this bit, is what iWire recommends. But you want to start off with a pilot hole, so basically a smaller hole with the drill. So I'm just going to get a really small bit. I'm going to go ahead and drill these guys out over in the other room where my drill is, and then I'll go ahead and drill this one out once I make the pilot hole, and then I will be back in just a moment. Okay guys, so I have the holes drilled here. So as you can see, I went ahead and installed this stud. We're going to go ahead and install the second one. So we're going to go ahead and take this black insert here, and we're going to go ahead and press this in. As you can see, the stud will then go in over that. And on the back side, we're going to go ahead and put this washer in place, which goes right there. We're then going to go ahead and grab one of these guys here and get this guy started. Make sure he's not cross-threaded. And this is kind of an unusual size. It's like a 3/8 is what I found to work. I couldn't find a metric size that would work for some reason. But yeah, 3/8 seems to be the closest, so that's what I went with. I choose to use this for the actual tightening because I feel like I have better control, kind of better sensation as far as how tight I'm actually going with this tool. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. It is difficult to hold this guy on the back end. This guy is just like a little bit crooked here, but not too crooked. I wonder if that's my problem, is that I'm just a little off to the side. Maybe I should have done it like over here or here, where I didn't have to worry about the restrictions of the sides here. But hopefully this will be okay and it won't leak or anything like that. So I'm going to see if I can go just a pinch tighter. I do not like the way this guy is just slipping off. Nor do I like how easy he turns. And I definitely can't get this on this aspect of it. Nor can I get that. I just need to go a little bit tighter. It doesn't have to be way tighter. I don't understand why I'm having so much trouble with this stupid thing. Well, I don't know what to say. Okay guys, so I went ahead and got these two studs installed. If I could do this again, I would probably move these holes maybe out here to the edges to where there's a little bit more room to work with. This is just really tight. I went ahead and attached these two. I didn't tighten them down, but I just kind of put them on loosely. I may kind of reposition these depending on how everything sits, but for now I just tacked those up. Okay, so now we have this ground wire that we need to deal with. This essentially is the ground wire from the old fuel pump. So basically I need to connect these two guys. This could potentially be shortened, but I'm not quite sure how it's going to sit, so I'm probably just going to I might shorten it just a little bit more. And I think I'll go with this. So I'm going to go ahead and put this shrink wrap over here that they provided. That's a special shrink wrap, so it's ethanol safe and everything. And then I'm going to go ahead and strip this wire here. And then I'm going to go ahead and strip this wire. Perfect. Okay. And then they included this little guy right here. And I probably made this a pinch too long. I'm going to cut some of that off. Okay. So we got this guy here. So we're going to go ahead and pinch this guy down. Okay, that one is tight. We're going to go ahead and do the same one here. Okay, so I think this is pretty good. There you go, a pinch tighter on this one. Boom. Okay, so we're good here. So now we need to go ahead and use the shrink wrap here. We want to use a heat gun. We don't want to use an open flame. My whole garage smells like gasoline. So I'm actually going to go inside and do this with my heat gun. Probably upstairs in the bathroom where there's not a lot of gas fumes. So I will be right back. Okay guys, so I got this shrink wrap attached here. It didn't shrink up quite as well as I would have liked, to be honest with you, but I guess it'll have to do. So what we're going to do next is try and get this guy back together. So let's see how this goes. So we're going to take these two springs here, and we're going to go ahead and put these guys back here where they go. We're going to go ahead and bring this piece together. I took this back out of the housing as we cannot put it together. We have to put this together and then put it back in the housing. So essentially, but I want to have it in the housing so that we can make sure everything's going to fit as far as the pump itself. Okay, so if you remember correctly, these two big metal things, these are kind of your guide. So I'm pushing these guys in first, especially this one over here, because that's the longer one. You kind of have to wiggle these guys to get them to go in. And then once I get these guys in a little bit, then I'm going to stop and adjust this plastic and make sure that nothing is binding here, because this stuff is all super fragile. Okay, and then I can go a little bit further, adjust the plastic again, a little bit further, adjust the plastic again. Okay, so now I'm at a point to where I want to actually look and see how this stuff is going to sit. So this guy will be okay pretty much however. the ground, so I'm not going to worry about the ground. So what I am going to do is snap this guy into place. Okay, so we got him snapped into place. And then we need to figure out exactly how this guy is going to curl, because essentially this guy needs to curl up, and this giant connector is going to somehow stay within the fuel pump, which seems a little crowded to me. So actually what I might do, I'm actually going to pull this out. What we might end up having to do is completely twist this guy around once and then snap him in place. That's kind of what it looks like we're going to have to do. So, so I'm trying to see how this big metal piece, this big plastic piece would probably fit the best. I'm going to say like this, if you can see that. So to accommodate that guy, it might be easier if we had these two guys right here facing the other direction. So let's try that. Let's loosen these guys up. And then let's kind of reposition these guys. This is going to be a little bit of trial and error here. Hopefully you guys can at least sort of see this. Sorry, it's kind of a tight, difficult spot. Basically, I'm just unscrewing these two wires that I connected onto these bypass studs. And the whole point of these bypass studs, I didn't really touch on this, but basically the stock electrical connector, this guy, is really only designed for a very small amount of electricity pass through. So I guess there's been issues with shorts and all kinds of issues, even with the stock pump, according to iWire. So that's the reason that these things are used, essentially, is to help prevent all that. Okay, so we got this guy's completely off. The other one is loose. So let's go ahead and turn this guy over here. Let's try this. So if we now bring this guy around here, boom, and then this guy into here like this, that looks pretty good to me. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and tighten these guys down right where they are now. Yeah, I think that is probably going to be our best bet. It's probably going to be our only bet. I think this will work. Okay, so, yep, let's go ahead and tighten these guys down right here. So we're going to pull this back a little bit. Oops, to accomplish this, I do not want these guys slipping out. So I'm going to very carefully pull this guy back out of here. So a lot of this, like I said, is just kind of trial and error, getting everything to fit, and it is a huge pain in the butt to do if you haven't noticed. So For those of you that want to just spend the money on a radium hanger, I applaud you, because probably the way to go. But that being said, I think installing a radium hanger also has its challenges, and you still have to get into the gas tank, and you still have to redo all this, and I don't know. I know it looks pretty involved because I've seen videos on that as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hold this on the back side here and tighten this guy as well. Tighten both these guys. Alright. Okay, that guy's pretty tight. And then we'll get this guy tight. Boom. Actually, that tightened that whole thing, so good. Okay, we got both these guys pretty tight. Okay, so I think these are about as good as we're gonna get. Alright, so let's put the springs back on. Let's put these back in, and let's see how this ends up looking. Okay, we're moving along here. Starting to feel some tension on the springs. So now, let's go ahead and plug in this guy right here. Boom, he's plugged in. He's got a nice curl to him. That guy looks pretty good. I think that is gonna work. So we wanna make sure none of this is like gonna be binding up as this spring goes up and down on this guy. Okay, so now we're gonna come back down here. We're gonna attach some of this stuff. I just wanna make sure everything is loose. Man, this plastic thing is actually kind of obtrusive. All right, let's see how this is gonna go. So, so now we're running into another issue, which is the bottom of this fuel pump is hitting this black plastic guy here and kind of preventing him from wanting to go in. Well, looks like he goes in barely. Absolutely barely. Wow. Okay, so that was a close call. Then we got this guy here. This guy I think is gonna go in without any issues. The pump doesn't get in the way of him. So we're good there. Okay. So we are looking pretty good, actually. Looking pretty good, I must say. So now we've got this black guy here, which is the ground, and this guy needs to come down here, and he's going to snap into place from this aspect right here. And I don't remember, oh, I think he must go down through this hole over here. Ooh, hopefully this guy is long enough. Okay, so hopefully that's okay the way he's routed. Okay, it looks like we have a bit of movement here. We've got everything all tucked up. Okay, so what we want to do now before we put this bottom piece on is we want to mark these guys. So the colors on these are very important because we do not want to get positive and negative mixed up. So iWire actually, I believe, lists the white as positive, as you can see right here, but on mine it's going to actually be the opposite. Actually, maybe not. Actually, never mind. Okay, I'm wrong. So see, we've got the red wire right here, and that's going to come out to white. So red is positive. So white is positive. And then I can see that white goes to this one right here. So this is going to be positive, and this is going to be negative. All right, I'm going to double, triple check this one more time because I do not want to be wrong. Okay, so this is the pump. This is red. Red is positive. Red is going straight through this connector. Boom, boom, boom. Red to white. White is positive. And then we're going to continue. White, white, white. White is going to be this close one right here. Dunk, dunk, dunk. White is indeed positive. Blue, black to blue. And blue is going to be this upper one from where I'm at now. Should be negative, negative. Okay, we got it. Okay, all right, so now you've got this guy. Oh, the other concern with that little gap that we had here was that we have this O-ring down here, which has to do with this guy. And so we need to make sure that that O-ring is going to seal this guy. So you know what I think I'm going to do? You can see that O-ring right in there. I'm going to actually put a second O-ring in there using this kit that I just bought. Let's go ahead and do that just to be on the safe side, because my concern is that's not going to sit quite as low with that gap right there. And I want to make dang sure that we have a good seal. So let's go ahead and slide. I believe it's going to be this guy right here. We can double check. Yep. That looks pretty good. And actually what we can probably do, let's go ahead and bring this guy out with a pick here. Hopefully you can see the guy I'm talking about here. Okay. Oop. Okay. So we got him right here. Hopefully I didn't damage him with the pick. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take just a hint of oil on these guys. And we are going to go ahead and put them in. Let's go ahead and put this guy in first, and he, if anything, will act as a bit of a spacer, but also act to help create a good seal, because we want to make sure that we are sucking up fuel, because I believe that that's maybe at least part of what that guy is doing right there. So we'll go ahead and push this brown one in first. We'll push this black one in second. And we can actually use that to just press those in place. Perfect. So that will probably be helpful. Okay. So now let's see if this guy wants to go back together. So one more visual inspection. Everything looks pretty good to me. Okay, so if we can remember how this went. Boom. 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 And actually, maybe this guy is not wanting to go. I think that this is actually creating a problem. I feel like it's not wanting to pop in. So you know what? I'm gonna retract. I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of that O-ring. We'll just stick with the black one and hope for the best, because I feel like there was some resistance with it going in right there. So, and that's the last thing we need is any extra resistance. We already have a crap ton of resistance. Okay, there we go. That I think is better, probably. Yep, no problem. Make sure those tabs are all on the outside. Okay, they are. Why is this not going like it did before? Come on, you little puppy. That one in. That one's in. That one is not going in. That one is also not going in. Dang, why is this thing giving me so much more resistance than it did last time? Why are you giving me more resistance? It's giving me more resistance right here. I'm not quite sure why. Let's take another look. I feel like I'm having to push this in a little bit too hard for my liking. I'd rather not break this guy. So I'm getting the resistance right here. Why? Why am I getting all this resistance? What is going on? Nope, that guy is not willing to go. Why are you not willing to go? Alright, I'm gonna work on getting this guy tightened down. Okay guys, I was able to get all of these guys snapped into place. This was very difficult. I feel like I am definitely pushing the stress boundaries of the plastic here. This thing is super tight. It looks like a couple of these guys popped off too. But it looks like this thing is ready to install. So that's what we're going to do now. So essentially we're going to put it back in the car. We're going to go ahead and use this rubber cover, which I'm going to go ahead and clean and put back into place. I'm going to go ahead and use this guy right here and bolt it down. And then what I'm going to do for the wiring is I've got these guys marked clearly, which is a very important step. So then I'm going to take these wires and essentially I'm going to put the positive here, negative here. I'm going to use these guys, and these are, I believe that they're non-conductive, so these need to be put on very gently, otherwise they'll break. But the idea is that way if metal or something touches the top of this, that it doesn't short circuit. And then this will plug into the I-wire, basically wiring, the hard wiring kit that I'm using. So I'm going to go ahead and get this back in the car. Okay guys, I went ahead and cleaned this rubber grommet here, and then we've got this pump ready to go back in. I did went ahead and put this back into place here. Once again, this is basically just going to give us the fuel level. It's the float. So we're going to kind of put this back in the same way that it came out. So I'm trying to remember the exact direction that it was facing. So I believe that it was facing this direction right here. Yep. Okay, so this is the way it's going to go back in. So we're going to go ahead and start by putting the float in here. And then we're going to kind of wiggle this guy down. Just kind of take our time. It is a little tricky to kind of push into this grommet here. So we do just kind of take our time. There's no hurry. There we go. Whoa. Okay, and it looks like we have a problem already. I didn't realize that this thing sat so low. This thing is not squishing down low enough to actually... Oh, shit. Okay, this is not going to work. Great. Okay guys, so this guy right here is in the way, and essentially this guy would not compress enough to where I could bolt him in. So essentially I just pulled him out from underneath here, And I'm just going to leave him out here. I don't see why it really matters. He's going to be basically submerged in fuel anyway. The only trick is going to be kind of maneuvering this guy into the actual into the fuel pump. But I think if I can get it in the fuel pump, this is going to work great, because otherwise I'm going to have to like disconnect this and re-splice this all, which is going to be a huge pain in the butt, especially when it's all covered in fuel. And then I'm going to have to try and find some like ethanol safe shrink wrap, and it's just going to be a nightmare. So I'm just going to go ahead and try and get this guy to go in the way it is, okay? Okay, so basically the exact same thing, except for now we have another obstacle. So we're going to put that obstacle in first. And then let's see if we can somehow get this. Oh yeah, that went in. That was not really an issue at all. It still seems like it's not wanting to go all the way down. Okay, so now I've got this in here. Let's go ahead and try and line up these holes. See if this has any effect on it. So these are not lined up correctly. I'm trying to figure out which way this goes. It looks like this kind of only goes one way. I'm not sure which way. So I think that actually these two that seem close together go over here like this. I think this is how it goes. Let's see. Yep. Okay, perfect. So that fits without issue. I'm gonna turn this guy. And I am still hitting some resistance. I don't know why this thing is not going all the way down. What am I? I don't know what, but this guy's not wanting to go all the way down. He's barely squishing it all. Oh, you know why? I think it's because of this guy right here. I think it's this rubber grommet that's creating the resistance now. Maybe, I don't see what else it would be. Okay, maybe I was wrong. There we go. Okay, now it's in. I'm just gonna go for it because I do not want to lift this freaking thing up. Do I have this thing turned at the incorrect angle or something? Why? Okay, it's essentially turned the wrong fucking way. Oh, so I can just basically turn this guy. Boom, boom. And this is indeed no, it's not right. This is not right. It's fucking backwards. Okay, so this whole thing needs to go. Okay, there we go. That's probably part of our issue the whole goddamn time, is I had it facing the wrong direction. That probably did not help. Okay, we're gonna go for it. Man, this thing is a huge pain in the ass. Hopefully it works. I think next time I do this, I will probably buy a radium hanger and just do it right. But the problem with the radium hangers is they're just so freaking expensive. It's like an extra $700 that I definitely do not have. This is not even the right size wrench. There we go. So I think the fact that I had it facing the wrong way is was probably contributing to the issues I was having, getting it to go in correctly. I guess kind of a big clue for the way this is supposed to go is this angles up in the same degree as this guy angles up. Hopefully none of this shit leaks. What I really want to do is just freaking get this guy tightened up, open up the garage and air it out. I've got it cracked right now so that it doesn't smell like gas. And I'm sure my whole house probably smells like gas also. But this is probably one of the least funnest jobs to do on this car. It's because it's just terrible. You're just dealing with fuel. It's a really tight fit. It's frustrating to get in here. I'm sure once you do it a handful of times it gets easier, but this is the second time I've done it, and it's a lot more difficult with this Walbro 525 than it was with the 450. And then I'm going to kind of go in a bit of a star pattern just to get this down evenly. You definitely don't want your gas tank leaking. And then once I get it pretty tight, I just kind of go around in a circle to make sure I'm not missing any. I think from here, what I'm probably going to end up doing is I'll do a dual. I'll end up getting a radium hanger for dual 450s. Going to be kind of my next step. Alright, I'm going to get a ratchet actually and tighten these a little bit more. Oops. Go a little bit tighter here. Not crazy tight. I've already stripped enough stuff out on this car. Go around one more time. And what I like to do is before I put this final cover back on is actually run the fuel pump and make sure there's no leaks. That's what I did last time with any of these fuel lines. Alright, let's see if we can remember where everything goes. Okay, so this guy is marked with a 1. This is a 1. So we got this guy here. Damn, I'm getting these things dirty. So this one obviously only goes one way. Okay, what I do, however, want to do is make sure that these are really clean. Dust is kind of flying everywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and take a clean paper towel and a little bit of carb cleaner, basically to this area right here. Actually, I'm gonna grab a brand new paper towel. Dang, I'm running out of carb cleaner. I definitely want this guy to be perfectly clean. Do a little bit more. Boom, that guy went right on. Okay, now we got this guy. This is 2. This is, I think, a 2. And I'm just kind of lining those guys up. Perfect. Okay, 1 left. And then this should be all the exposed fuel lines once I get this guy in. Okay, and this guy's way down here. These rags also kind of make it easier to see these lines, to find them. Not to mention at least sort of keep them clean. Maybe. I'm gonna turn this to the right angle. Boom. Okay, so all the fuel lines are now back in. Perfect. Okay, so now we've got positive, we've got negative. So now, what we're gonna do is grab this wire and grab these guys right here. And essentially these two are going to connect to these two, white to positive, blue to negative. We're going to plug this guy back in. We're going to run this wire through here. And then we're going to plug it in right here to this wiring harness. And that essentially is it. So I'll set those right there. So what we need to do is kind of just push this through here, which I think we can do probably without even a tool, maybe. Yeah. Maybe not. Actually, I should probably use a screwdriver to push through that, otherwise we're gonna screw up the wiring. So we'll grab the screwdriver. We're gonna push this through to make a hole gently. Well, actually I shouldn't say gently, I should say with care, to make sure that we don't break any of these wires. That's really the concern, is we don't want to break any of the wires. So now we've got a hole, we can just push these guys through. Push this guy through. Boom. So easy peasy. disconnect these guys, plug this guy back in. Then, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and hook up the rest of the fuel system, basically just the rest of the wiring, and then I'm going to go ahead and cycle it, and I'm going to go ahead and check the lines back here to make sure they're not leaking, and I'm going to check all of the fuel system lines to make sure they're not leaking as well before I go ahead and put that cover back on. And then once I do, we'll go ahead and get that cover back on, and should be getting pretty close to ready to start the car here before long. But that essentially is how you install the fuel pump. That was an absolute nightmare. That stock hanger is just not designed for that Walbro 525. So like I said, it's probably worth the money to buy a radium. But if you don't, then you can do what I did and kind of jimmy rig your heart out. So, all right, thanks for watching, guys. Have a good night.